Nocturnal recaps here. Today I'm going to tell you about one of the most unique movies in years, a 2022 comedy in the style of black and white Charlie Chaplin movies, titled Hundreds of Beavers. The perpetually drunk distiller loses everything at one point and declares war on the beavers. The movie begins by describing the life of a distiller named Gene Kayak. Bro is living his best life, creating apple brandy and drinking like an animal. But one fateful day, beavers ruin his idol by stealing one barrel of brandy, while another crashes into his house and sets the farm on fire. A man wakes up in the middle of a snowy forest and discovers that there is nothing left of his past life. Remembering that he had once watched a couple of episodes of Man vs. Wild, he builds a fire and unsuccessfully tries to get himself a rabbit. Suffering from hunger, the man spots two beavers and selflessly attacks them, but they quickly show who is the gangster of this forest.
Bubr, kurwa! Ja pierdolę jakie bydlę!
Not finding success in the hunt, Gene goes to the river where after several unsuccessful attempts, he manages to catch a couple of fish, using his bloody finger as bait. While lying in the snow because of blood loss, he notices a fur trapper riding his gachi-muchi sled to a merchant's house and decides to go there too. Gene is the first to arrive, and as he clumsily tries to pull off a fish frozen to his ass, he notices how beautiful the merchant's daughter is. At the same time, a fur trapper arrives with a large shipment of beavers, and the merchant once again tries to marry off his daughter to him. But the man, not wanting to lose his bells on his wedding night, refuses. The fur trapper leaves, and Gene finally exchanges his fish for a coin, for which he immediately buys an average-sized knife. With this knife, Gene creates a rope and sets a trap on the rabbit, but fails as they use an imbalanced fast travel system. Utilizing the man's main evolutionary advantage, Gene blocks all but one of the burrows near where the snare is set. The plan works, but on the spot, he discovers an ancient Roman-level backstabbing from a raccoon that ate his rabbit. After a few more failed attempts, Gene, having created more rope from his pants, sets a hanging trap into which the raccoon himself falls. After getting into a fight with a forest bandit, he drags it to a merchant, and on the way, he notices an Indian with whom he trades his knife for snowshoes. Arriving at the merchant's house, Gene takes the raccoon's carcass to his daughter, who skillfully skinned it and made him the best drip in the neighborhood. Satisfied with his new look, he is serenely walking through the woods when he falls into one of the fur trapper's pits. Hunter pulls Gene out of the pit, treats his wounds, and teaches him the path of the fur trapper. While traveling along their trap route, wolves regularly visit their camp each night, taking one dog with each visit. A few nights later, they take the last dog and attack Gene, but the fur trapper enters the fray with them, cosplaying Aragorn fending off the Nazguls. The forces are not equal, so they are forced to hide on a tree, but the wolves catch the fur trapper, and he gives Gene his trap map with his last strength, just before the wolves take him away. After coming down from the tree in the morning, Gene buries his sensei and follows the trail of the wolves, who have taken all their prey to their cave. Not really trying to understand the fur trapper's map, Gene erases it so he can draw a new one. Returning to the merchant, Gene trades the dog's cards for rope and informs him of the fur trapper's death. After further exploration of the area, Gene meets the Indian again and smokes a pipe of peace with him. The man notices hoof prints and asks about them, whereupon the Indian shows Gene his horse, aka the next Academy Award winner for Best Costume. After a short wander through the woods, Gene manages to get one beaver caught in his trap, but his actions do not go unnoticed by Churlog Holmes and Dr. Nawson. The man exchanges the beaver for a smoking pipe, for which he immediately receives a tomahawk from an Indian, with the help of which he builds various traps for catching animals. Gene gradually improves his skills by obtaining beasts and trading them for items from the merchant and the Indian, until he barters the merchant's last item, a musket. While the merchant is distracted, Gene sweet-talks his daughter and suggests she marry him, but the merchant intervenes in this conversation. Clearly unwilling to marry his only daughter to this drunkard, he says that he will only allow them to marry if Gene brings him hundreds of beavers. Gene is not discouraged, and like a true Sigma male continues his frenzied farming of forest wildlife. He automatizes these processes, harvesting beavers by the dozens, but when Damlock Holmes and Dr. Barkson notice all this, they call their bros to beat the crap out of him. After getting the idea from an Indian, Gene gathers brushwood to smoke the wolves out of the cave, but the beavers follow him on his trail. When they catch up with him in the wolves' cave, they discover it is only bait. Hearing the noise, the wolves wake up, and a fight breaks out between them, while Gene blocks the exit with icicles, locking them in a small branch of Sodom and Gomorrah. Grinning from ear to ear, he returns to the merchant with a huge sack of beavers to propose to his daughter. Having lost the ability to see stereoscopically, due to the blood flowing from his head to his hormone gun, Gene fails to notice the obvious trap that causes him to lose all his beavers. Gathering all his willpower in his fist, he heads to the dam to reclaim what is rightfully his. Using the dumbest stealth mechanic in video games, Gene sneaks up on the dam and gets in through a pipe. There, like a ninja in the Emperor's castle, he makes his way through the many guards until he accidentally stumbles upon a barrel of his favorite Applejack. Plagiarizing the very scene from Lord of the Rings in Mount Doom, the man manages to overcome his desires, and he decides to return his loot by all means. Losing his guard for a second, Gene is spotted by the watchmen, and they raise the alarm and set off in pursuit of the intruder. This time, luck turns away from Gene, and he hits his balls hard, which allows the beavers to catch him. The man is taken to court, where the prosecutor presents all the evidence of Gene's atrocities, collected by Lumber Holmes and Dr. Woodson. The attorney is clearly not Saul Goodman, so the defense line fails miserably, and the man is found guilty. Gene opens his eyes, tied to the table, as beavers attempt to turn him into a coat. Using his intelligence, on the level of Hawking and Einstein combined, Gene breaks free from the loops, and a fight ensues between them, which I sincerely consider one of the best fight scenes of recent years. Showing who's the daddy, Gene goes outside and discovers that his beavers are being prepared for a funeral. The man goes after them, and along the way discovers that the beavers are preparing to launch a rocket into space, using his Applejack as fuel. When Gene gets into a fight with one of the beavers, the latter accidentally breaks the prop, and the rocket goes into an uncontrolled flight, dooming the beavers to lose the space race with Otter Union. The dam is slowly crumbling, much like my psychological state while watching this movie, and the beavers run after the bastard who ruined months of their hard work. Gene manages to escape, and after quickly dealing with the funeral procession, he pulls the sack of beavers down the mountain, turning it into a snowball. The man follows him on a sled, as do the beavers, giving us a chase scene that is more talented than all the Fast and Furious movies put together. While Gene is riding a snow globe, the movie's writers decide to switch to harder drugs and transform beavers into giant mecha. As the robot gradually approaches Gene, it accidentally steps on the Indian's horse. The thirst for revenge burns in the eyes of the native, and he lassos the erratically flying rocket, directing it towards the beavers. The mecha shatters, allowing Gene to successfully make his way to the merchant. Tearing open the sack, the man bestows the merchant with hundreds of beavers and takes his well-deserved reward.